now we're moving back to the amendments. Okay, so my proposal is that we deal with, first of all, the 3 issues that were specifically consulted on, and sorry, it's hard to skip around these documents. I'm sure I can open 2 documents at once if someone showed me how to do it.
Yeah, it's reading them both at once is the tricky thing.
Yeah, I haven't quite worked out how to do that yet. I mean, I'm enjoying being paperless, but I haven't quite got my head around the technology yet. Okay, so the first item that I'm proposing that we deal with, right, is the the first recommendation is item 22, resolve not to amend its significance and engagement policy to reinstate City Care Limited shares as a strategic asset. And as I said, I have a foreshadowed motion if that is not agreed to. So I will so I will deal with that first. So if councillors refer to the other document, which closing, which is on the full agenda on page 75, the attachment sets out. Where are we? Sorry. The attachment provides the advice that was provided to Council on the 15th of December 2016 in terms of a strategic asset. And the significance and engagement policy starting point is Section 5 of the Local Government Act 2002, which defines a strategic asset as being an asset that the Council needs to retain if it is to maintain its capacity to achieve or promote any outcome that the Council determines to be important to the current or future well-being of the community. In responding to the question what constitutes a strategic asset, then perhaps the first thing elected members should think about is what they consider to be important for the current and future well-being of the community. What may initially come to mind is efficient and effective infrastructure that provides services such as stormwater, wastewater and water system. These are on the strategic assets list along with the Council's waste management system, roading network and all the public transport infrastructure owned and operated by the Council. Next might be the Council's community facilities, given the Council's investment in its Strengthening Communities program, and the third point is relevant to the cost of providing that infrastructure and those facilities. And I guess my point is and there were very mixed views in terms of the submissions that were received, is that because this is the organisation that provides repairs and maintenance and builds that essential, critical, strategic asset of our infrastructure, does not in itself make the organisation that does that work a strategic asset. So what is it about the ownership of City Care that creates a strategic value to the city? That would only occur, in my view, if we were able to favour City Care in terms of the contracting arrangements which we have, which we can't do. So we can't say that we will give all of our water services work to City Care. We're just not allowed to do that under our procurement policy. It would not be possible. City Care has responded to the proposal to sell it last year, which we did not proceed with. in an incredibly positive way. They've actually reviewed their performance, and they are changing the way that they're operating. They've actually learned, I think, quite considerably from the process that they went through, and I want to kind of commend them for going down that track. But I think part of their part of the way that they're kind of reinforcing their place in the marketplace is by ensuring that they're not just in Christchurch. So they've won an exemplary contract in Auckland. They've won a wonderful contract up there, but they also contract in Wellington. So they're not a their shares are not strategic to Christchurch City Council ownership. So that's why I'm proposing that we resolve not to amend our significance and engagement policy by reinstating City Care as a strategic asset. That does not mean that the assets that they look after aren't strategic, as the assets that they look after in Auckland are strategic to water care, and they're strategic to the Auckland City Council, and they're strategic in terms of Wellington-owned assets to their city. So to me, I think it's important that we don't confuse things. Part of the submissions that we received, and I thought that that people were quite thoughtful about this, but what I really felt was that people were confused about the strategic asset as to whether that meant you had to consult on the sale or not. And so it was the consultation that people were focused on rather than focusing on whether they were a strategic asset. So the consultation that would have to occur if we were to put City Care back on the market, and there is absolutely no intention, no indication that that is something that this council would consider, then I think that it's important to say that, of course, there would be public consultation if it were to occur, because it is a significant asset. That doesn't make it a strategic asset. The strategic asset sparks a special consultative process. It's usually done as part of the LTP, but it's an amendment to the LTP. It's the equivalent to the amendment of an LTP as an amendment to the significance and engagement policy, and that's why I think it's really important that we don't mix up the two. Obviously it's a significant asset and there would have to be consultation. So I would ask councillors to resolve not to amend the significance and engagement policy. Anyone else? Jamie? Andrew?
Thanks. Agree with the Mayor. I won't be supporting resolving to put City Care on the strategic asset register. Pretty simple, really. It's not a strategic asset. So saying that it is doesn't actually make it one. It is quite literally a contracting company that operates in a competitive marketplace. It wins some contracts, it loses some contracts, and actually most of its margins are made in the North Island. So what would its strategic purpose be? Is it price competition? And if it is price competition, that's a bit of a nebulous argument, because there are enough local businesses in the marketplace to ensure that that price competition exists, certainly in Christchurch for obvious reasons. Is it dividends? Is it the income stream? Well, given that it doesn't just service Christchurch, would that mean then that if we had shares in Xero or Ryman, that that's a strategic asset? Of course not. That would provide us a good income stream, but it doesn't serve a strategic purpose. So I won't be supporting putting it on the strategic asset register, not because I intend to sell it. We don't intend to sell it, and it actually doesn't stop you selling it anyway. But it just shows that you don't really understand the meaning of the word. It is simply not a strategic asset. It is a contracting company. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it.
Andrew?
In my view, there are two aspects to the strategic value that City Care has to the city. The first of which is its profitability and the dividend that it returns, and the other of which is the local capacity that it provides. And I'm going to keep what I'm going to say to the strategic value that I believe City Care has, rather than whether we should continue to own City Care or what level of consultation there would be whether it was listed as a strategic asset or not, because whether it's strategic or not is what today's debate is about. So City Care returns over $6 million in profit, which obviously comes through CCHL as a dividend. The benefit of the dividend from all of the CCHL companies is that it keeps the rates down, and that actually brings about a social benefit. It's interesting to note that with the exception of Redbus, CityCare is the only one of the CCHL companies that isn't listed as a strategic asset. We are very aware that the dividends that come from the CCHL companies do keep the rates down, bring about social benefits, allow us to do more than we otherwise would be able to do as a council without the resulting impact on rates. We've also heard recently through the Finance and Performance Committee that capacity and resourcing in maintenance is an issue. Maintenance of parks and gardens in particular, maintenance of roading and footpaths in particular have been big issues to our community, are issues of key importance to our community, relate to community well-being, and we heard a number of submissions through this annual plan process as part of a pattern of submissions we've heard over a number of years that these matters are of community importance and are a key aspect of the way that our communities feel and the effect that the infrastructure maintenance has on community well-being. Through our strategic directions conversation, we've discussed that in order for our communities to thrive, not only do we need to have infrastructure delivered through our capital programme, but that infrastructure needs to be maintained so that it's fit for purpose, so that it supports good social, economic and environmental outcomes, all of which are absolutely key to the strategic objectives that we've been discussing. Now, whilst accepting that CityCare is a contracting company, another part of the value that CityCare has to us is that we know while we've got CityCare, we've got capacity. And in a city where in recent years we've experienced floods, we've experienced other weather events, we've experienced earthquakes, we've experienced landslip, that's absolutely important to the well-being of our city. The recent CityCare restructure can only add to the commercial ability of CityCare to return a profit and a dividend, which adds to the strategic value that CityCare brings us because it returns that dividend. I was opposed to CityCare being removed from the strategic assets list at the time that the last council made that decision, and therefore I'll be opposing the recommendation today.
Glenn?
Thank you. I similarly oppose the recommendation today. We've been asked to look at three things as per the report on page 76, so what we consider to be important in relation to the current or future well-being of the community, resource to achieve our objectives, and thirdly, assets on that list we may decide are strategic. I actually put it to you that you may wish to consider that CityCare is more strategic than we all realise. If I hold up the four well-beings, which is still a part of our local government consideration, I can see that there are four bottom lines that actually cascade out of those in relation to CityCare. There is a sense of community ownership in relation to the social well-being which CityCare delivers. I'm going to come to that a bit later. They are local and they have partnerships in the community. We know about the economic dividend. It's very good. It helps to keep the rates down. But along with those two are the environmental and cultural well-beings, and in that respect, two further bottom lines which are ticked here. I want to use one example, and that's in regard to the Avon or Takaro network. They're assisting them at the moment, pro bono, with the development of a cycle trail on top of the urgent work around the temporary stop banks that's being undertaken. They're completing the hard infrastructure at the Mahinga Kai site in terms of the wooden boardwalks, bridges and jetties. But most importantly, the feedback I have locally is that they are the only contractors with the ecological sensitivity to do a good maintenance job with the plantings. Now, this complements our resolution that we are making today over biodiversity in this annual plan about identifying areas having potentially significant indigenous vegetation and habitat types. Yes, we all know it's a contracting company, but in that procurement policy is a buy local section, which actually Councillor Kewen promoted at the time we put forward the policy. So when it comes to that tender matrix, I would expect that City Care would rate very highly in terms of what you would want by way of a local contract. So I put it to you, there's actually a community contract here, there's actually a social dividend, there are 4 bottom lines. It's more than just an economic or financial dividend producing company, and for those reasons alone I oppose that amendment, and if there's another foreshadowed one, I would support that at that time, which would put City Care back most firmly as a on the strategic assets list.
Thank you. We've had 2 speaking in support, in opposition. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in support of the motion? David?
Yeah, I'd just like to support Jamie's comments, and the Mayor's comment that we have at this stage have no intention of selling City Care. It is a contracting company. The services that City Care provide we could get from any one of a number of companies around the city and the country. So I will be supporting the Mayor's recommendation.
So if I take Yanni, then that's the end of the debate. So is there anyone else that would like to speak in support? Because we have 3 speaking on one side. So Yanni?
I thought we'd suspended standing orders as well, so.
Eh?
Only 2.
Right, okay, fine. Okay, I'll keep it brief and won't repeat the other things that have been said for the arguments about why I believe it's important to reinstate City Care as a strategic asset. But the one thing I did want to pick up on is that I get concerned that there's this thinking that for some reason we can't directly negotiate with our own CCOs. In fact, the Auditor General has released very clear guidelines, and I just wanted to quote what it says. It says, "There is no restriction in the Act on a local authority awarding contracts to its CCOs. This is a matter of policy for local authorities. The local authority's procurement policy should cover contracting with CCOs and how it fits with the local authority's overall policy and strategy. In some instances, local authorities might have strategic reasons for giving their CCOs work, such as ensuring their financial viability." So it's really important, I think, to understand that owning City Care is incredibly strategic for us as a city for the reasons that have been made in terms of the dividends that come in, also for the things that we can expect non-financial returns, such as the social and community partnerships and engagements that they may wish to choose, and we can set that through things like the statement of intent feedback and the letters of expectations through CCHL. So in my view, it's absolutely essential that we put City Care back on the strategic asset list if there is no desire to further sell it, which I don't have, which I do have, sorry. I don't have any desire to further engage in any sales process of it. I think the submissions we heard through this process were overwhelming last year and this year about the reason why, and one of the comments was made, it was to give certainty to City Care as an organisation about what its future would be, and I think today we can do that. I think it's in our best interest to ensure that City Care is returned to our strategic asset list, and there's huge strategic advantage to having local ownership of a local company doing local work in our city.
Thank you. I'll take the other 2 just because Ian's clarifying whether they have to be sequentially or not. So I'll take Dion and then Phil.
All I was going to say is actually I'll support the foreshadowed motion, so I won't be supporting the putting City Care, well, keeping City Care off the strategic asset list, purely for the simple fact that we haven't really talked about the people. Now, City Care have a lot of people, and they are strategic, and they are an asset to our city. And I believe that giving them the certainty, as Yanni just said, is vitally important to the city moving forward. And if we're the city of opportunity, I actually want to stabilise and actually give people in our organisations the confidence to actually do things differently. And actually, if our strategic, or if our procurement policy doesn't allow us to do what we want to do, then we need to change it or look at it. Simple. But the people of that organisation are strategic, and they're an asset.
Yeah, I'll take, but if I take Phil, so are you speaking for or against?
Does it matter?
Yes, it does, because, right, then I'll take Phil, and that'll be the end of the debate. Thank you.
I'll be brief. I just sort of almost can't believe that, in fact, councillors would have a perception that city care is not strategic. There's huge institutional knowledge retained by that company. We own it. Can I just say, if there was a major flood, say tomorrow or next week, like we had in March 2014, clearly city care would be strategic in terms of fixing our city, in terms of looking after our people. They have that institutional knowledge, they have that detailed historical knowledge around how our waterways work. And that is invaluable, and in that sense it's strategic. And so I'll certainly be voting against this and supporting an amendment.
Thank you. All right, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. No, you can't. I mean, there's three in a row. There's three spoke in favour. 3, 1, 2, 3. I said that we would put the motion after, in terms of the standing orders, for 3 speaking on one side. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. That's lost. I will now accept the foreshadowed motion, which is the Sorry? Oh, well, those that voted for the motion. So that's Gough, East, Manji, Kewen, Scandrett.
And Mayor?
And Mayor. Okay, so the foreshadowed motion is moved by Councillor Johansson, seconded by Councillor Chen, and reads, have you got it there?
No, we don't, but that the council amend its significance engagement policy to...
I thought, had these recommendations not...
Yeah, we didn't have any wording.
You didn't have the wording?
No, so it would be resolved...
That the council amend its strategic asset list and its significance and engagement policy to return by addition... no. Oh, it says wording to be agreed on the day. Okay. The council amend its strategic asset list and its significance and engagement policy, or to resolve to amend its significance and engagement policy to reinstate City Care Limited shares as a strategic asset. Yes? So it's just the inverse of mine. All right? So I'll put that motion. It's resolved to amend its significance and engagement policy to reinstate City Care Limited shares as a strategic asset. It's the complete inverse of mine, yeah. No.
Isn't this an amendment?
No, it was the foreshadowed motion, which was a complete inverse of the motion. But it's the same motion. It's the inverse.
So why are we not allowed to speak?
Because we've already dealt with it as a council. We were going to deal with this as one, but look, you know, if I'm a reasonable person, but you know, we have got a very large amount of work to get through, and we agreed that the standing orders would apply to the speaking arrangements. We agreed that during the whole process. But anyway, Vicky, I'll call you, but I hope that you're the only speaker on it. I don't think it's going to change anyone's view of what's going to happen.
I just think it's a democratic right. I actually voted to look at the sale of City Care. Having gone through that process, I am completely sure that we cannot look at the sale of City Care for the next 10 years at least. And having seen the work that City Care has done in its restructuring, we have to support them in that restructuring and support them as much as we can in terms of what we can do for them. I agree that City Care has really major assets in terms of its water capability, particularly its water capability. But I think having gone through that attempt at sale, which was not successful, we literally cannot look at selling City Care for 10 years anyway, so it totally may as well be on the strategic asset list. But what we need to do is provide the reassurance for those staff there and for the people who are working very hard to make sure that City Care actually works. City Care is, in my view, a successful social enterprise. The profits come back to the community. So that's why my view has changed, and that's why I wanted to explain the difference in my voting.
Thank you. Right, I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. So, those that oppose this motion, put up your hand. No, it's not the same. I'm going to vote for the motion now that it's been foreshadowed. So who are opposed? East and Gough. Thank you. So that motion is carried. Now we move on to the New Brighton Hot Saltwater Pools project. And my recommendation is that we confirm the further funding of 11.2 million for the Hot Saltwater Pools project, noting that 7.3 million is included in the annual plan for the delivery of phase 1. So this adds to that. And we have two amendments. One is an amendment. Councillor Davidson, did you have a seconder for your amendment? Yes, Sarah Templeton. So, and that amendment is that the proposed additional funding of 11.2 million is deferred for 3 years to allow time to assess the impact of the new $8 million waterfront playground, the rebuilt $36 million QE2 and other associated regeneration projects in the New Brighton area. So we'll deal with that one first. So let's move Councillor Davidson, seconded Councillor Templeton. So I'll call Mike Davidson to speak to it.
Thank you. I cannot support the proposed additional $11.2 million increase to the hot saltwater pools at this point of time. In a post-disaster environment when we're constantly seeing rates increases of 5% year after year, it is vitally important to rebuild what we have lost and at the same time prioritise what needs to be done. I agree that we have to look at new opportunities to bring on new ideas, but we have to ensure that when we do this, we do not create a burden to the citizens of Christchurch, and what we build actually achieves the desired outcome. And no matter how enticing or exciting a project may sound, we correctly prioritise what is needed for both the suburb concerned and the city. I'm not going to touch on the coastal hazards or the fact that there's 5 significant aquatic facilities currently proposed to be built in a very short period of time, but I want to have a look at what the point of this is. This hot saltwater pool is meant to regenerate the suburb of New Brighton, but with 80% of the local spend outside of this area, a tourist attraction is not going to stop that leakage. The pier currently attracts 10,000 visitors a month, and that has not regenerated New Brighton. And the hot saltwater pools is not going to reach that straight away. It is a tourist attraction, and New Brighton does not need another tourist attraction. It is a reason to cross the road and fix the core that Brighton need. DCL have signalled an intent to look at the core and are working in New Brighton doing a lot of great things. So why would we build an aquatic tourist attraction without first fixing the fundamental issue that New Brighton has, which is the core? I'm totally supportive of work being done in New Brighton, including all the work on the infrastructure, the $8 million free water playground and the rebuilding of QE2. And I applaud DCL with their vision, but I think we're making a mistake when we decide to build the hot saltwater pools at this time. Everything else, yes, let's fix the roads, let's fix the core, let's rebuild QE2, let's build a flash free to use water park. But the hot salt water pools, seriously, we need to really look hard at what we're doing in New Brighton. There is a lot of capital expenditure going on in New Brighton at the moment and over the next few years. This hot saltwater pool is not going to help New Brighton's problems. It is the core that is the problem with New Brighton not having a tourist attraction, because they already have a tourist attraction. It is called the Pier. If you listen to the community board, they tell you all the great things happening in Brighton, all the events they have in New Brighton that attract thousands and thousands of people. They come to New Brighton, but they do not shop in New Brighton. This is the reason, and that's what we need to focus on, not the hot salt water pools. I'm not against the hot salt water pools, but we should not be doing it at this point of time. We need to defer it for 3 years, let all the infrastructure get fixed, let the core be fixed, build the free water playground, and then have a look at the impact of those things on this suburb.
Thank you. I'm obviously going to vote against this remit, and I would like to just emphasise that Mike is right in one point, that the core is a problem for, business core is an issue in New Brighton. What I think is missing in this discussion is really the emphasis that DCL have put into working in New Brighton over a long period now. There's been significant engagement. This community has been consulted on a number of things. They've been consulted to death, and as I said in my earlier address, successive annual plans and submissions to the annual plan have seen record numbers of submissions from the people of the eastern suburbs. They have signalled their desire to get on with this project. In my mind, there are three cores to the rejuvenation of Christchurch. The pier was built, and yes, it is an asset. The hot salt water pools is the second part of the jigsaw, and the rejuvenation of the business core is the third. You cannot separate the three. They are totally integrated. I totally support the work that DCL have done and recognise the huge amount of support that the local community have put into supporting this project. We have gone through an annual plan process and signalled our intention to put $11.2 million into this project. It is a process that has been thorough, it has been robust, it has gone through every mechanism you could probably entail, and at the last moment now to derail work in New Brighton would be a travesty, and I would shudder to think the reaction that would result from the eastern suburbs if this project was to be further delayed. The three parts are integral, and I just cannot reiterate enough the amount of time, consultation, work that DCL have put into this project. It is all geared to go, and the asset in the end, and I dispute Councillor Davison's assertion that it's just a tourist attraction for New Brighton, is not wanted. We do need points of difference in the east, and this, the research and that DCL have done, points strongly to the support of this facility, and I just urge you to reject this motion and move forward.
Thank you. Glenn.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up today for the East. I always have. I've been with them from the word go, from 2011. I drove with your dad through the flooded streets of Bexley after the quake. We were giving out hot food from helicopters delivered. We were giving out water, meeting people at the driveways. I'm not sure that there are many other parts of the city that have been through that experience. Let's put the emotion to one side for 1 minute. We've all been over this subject many times. We've looked at this in terms of this public investment kick-starting private development in New Brighton. We know there's no magic silver bullet, we've all acknowledged that. But we've gone with this, we've examined the business case. I know we're going to be talking about the natural hazards dimension of it later. We accept that, and so do the residents in the east. I talked about the full well-beings before in city care ticking those boxes. I think this does for the community as well, and I implore you to support New Brighton in this regard. I also implore you to see that a tick for New Brighton is a tick for the whole city. So this just isn't about one ward. This ward belongs to all of us. It is technically David's ward, which he represents. But I stand with him, and I encourage you all to stand with him today to support the East. This is about the regeneration of this part of our city. I acknowledge the Mayor's part in ensuring that New Brighton ended up in the Regeneration Act for the city, because she saw that we had an immense challenge to overcome. And this is our job, to overcome immense challenges. So I encourage you to get behind this. There's a wee irony, Councillor Templeton, in your words, those hard hit by life, because that's how many in New Brighton would describe themselves. They've never had much to go on. And it's well known that natural disasters amplify existing social conditions. This is one example. So I can't see why you wouldn't support this part of the city. And I look forward to a good, strong vote for the East today, which is also a good, strong vote for our city. Thank you.
Andrew, then Sarah.
Thank you. There's a community expectation that we will deliver on this. And that expectation has been raised through a number of plans and a number of consultations, council's plans, council's consultations. And the previous council and this council have certainly raised that expectation, raised that anticipation that we will deliver on this project. The original resolution led by the Mayor in the previous term of council was a bold one. And this project has been referred to today as a tourist attraction. I would prefer to think of it more as a recreational facility. It's part of a joined-up approach in the work that DCL is doing in the New Brighton core, and we know that an integrated approach is the only approach that will work for New Brighton. And we also know that New Brighton and the East desperately need opportunity, desperately need intervention. We've heard time and time again from submitters that the East is lacking in facilities to allow that to happen, and this is the opportunity. We have a regeneration opportunity in New Brighton, of which the hot saltwater pools are a part, and I believe that we've got a responsibility to deliver against that expectation that we've raised, not least the expectation that New Brighton will once again be a thriving suburb, a destination, and a place that people love to live. So I'll be opposing this amendment today.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. It is clear from the Mayor's comment in the report here that there was clear support through the annual plan process for hot saltwater pools, and I can see why. If they get built, I will probably go and use them, but I won't go and buy a coffee afterwards. I will sit in the pools, I will enjoy the view, but it's not going to help the core. What community wouldn't support having a facility like this one in their local community? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing good decision making here. There was overwhelming support in the form of a very long petition for a set of traffic lights at Harewood Breens, but we were being very clear that it would be poor decision making to base our decision on that long petition. Twice as much support as we've had for the hot pools. We have raised expectations on many things over the years as a council, many things. People have had all sorts of expectations of the rebuild. That isn't necessarily going to lead us to good decision making, and we need to, at the fore of everything, keep good decision making at heart here. It was clear from the submissions that there was a lack of knowledge in the community about what we're already doing. Comments like, we've got nowhere to swim, where am I going to have my swimming lessons, and the council has done nothing for New Brighton, were the reasons given for supporting the hot saltwater pools. There is a lack of knowledge of the rebuild of QE2, $36 million, $8 million spent on the waterfront, a lack of knowledge of the the master plan funding and other works that are planned for the core in New Brighton. And that doesn't lead to good decision making. It leads to support for a project that will not be needed in the short term. I've only asked for a deferment here because in 3 years there will be a lot of work done in Brighton and we will be able to see the impact. Brighton is already a very connected community. The community board have told us there's 180 different groups in the area. They already get a lot of visitors. These pools aren't going to deliver the community outcomes that are needed in that area. It will deliver a nice place for people to go and sit and look at the sea. Those who need to soak their aching bones will go to the new hydrotherapy pool at QE2 that the community board have just approved to go into that facility. That doesn't mean that we need hot salt water pools. What I hear outside the annual plan process from people at Brighton is not build us hot pools, it's fix our streets, it's value us, it's fix our mall. Those are the things that people proactively say outside the annual plan process. When you get a small group of people going, we really want pools, let's get a whole pile of pro formas together, we've heard in the past, like petitions, that they are easy to get signatures for. That's not good decision making. The $11 million should be spent on areas that are the hardest hit by life, that don't already have $36 million pools and $8 million playgrounds being built.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I've got Yanni, Vicky, Tim and Aaron, so, you know, I'm just saying that I'm trying to structure this so obviously there'll be less speakers in the final debate on the actual motion, so rather than on the amendment, but you know, we'll take it as that people are going to be helpful in moving things along. So Yanni.
Cool. I support this amendment, and that's consistent with the view that was taken when we first agreed as the draft annual plan. And the idea, I just want to support the comments that have been made. The idea that we've done nothing in New Brighton does get a little bit tiresome when you look at the number of projects that even before the earthquake, council had done. The pier, the library, the mall upgrade. So there has been a huge public investment in New Brighton, and it hasn't had the desired consequences that people have expected. So I think what's really important for New Brighton is not to do nothing, but is to understand what the impact of what we're doing is going to be. And given that we've committed a huge amount of money already, just recently, to doing those things, then I think we should wait. I just want to read you an Edward de Bono quote. In the future, instead of striving to be right at a high cost, it will be more appropriate to be flexible and plural at a lower cost. If you cannot accurately predict the future, then you must flexibly be prepared to deal with various possible futures. And we just had a City Leaders Forum last night where actually this whole idea of trialling things, understanding things, learning from things as we go was thought of as a kind of really good way of doing things. In fact, I was amazed to hear that apparently there was a question around whether the stadium and the convention centre can be combined. And the answer was yes, I think. That's what I read in an email this morning. So, you know, like we should be open to getting these new ways of understanding by experimenting, by trialling and by looking and evaluating what we've done so that we can get a better outcome. But I've personally never supported the business case for the hot saltwater pools that we've been given from day one. I've always thought it's a hugely ambitious business case, not based on reality, but based on hugely aspirational assumptions to justify a project that I don't believe will have the benefits. But I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm supporting the amendment to say, let's just park it and do the first stage and then see where we go from there.
Vicky.
I will support the saltwater pools in Brighton because I think a whole community is banking on them. A whole community is expecting A whole community is expecting them, a whole community is excited about them, and I think they will make a difference in Brighton. I will go and sit in a hot saltwater pool, and I will go for a coffee afterwards at either Switch
Cafe
or Beer Lion or any one of a number of good cafes in Brighton, actually. When we I don't agree with David that the whole thing is an integral package, that we have to support the core of Brighton as well. I don't want ratepayers' money compulsorily invested in retail outlets. I think that's a highly risky business, especially given the technological disruption that will happen in retail, and I think Brighton probably needs to look at reinventing itself slightly so that it's not completely reliant on retail, and I think it needs to do that slightly differently than expecting us to guarantee property purchases or anything of the sort in the retail area. But in terms of a facility for the city that is about hot pools, I think the whole city wants it. And I think the logical place for it to be is at Brighton Beach. I think it's an awesome place for it to be, and I love the fact that there's a whole big free hot water playground alongside there, and I love the fact that QE2 is being reinstated, and I love the fact that Shirley Boys is going there and Avonside is going there as well. I think it's great, and I think what we need to remember is that all of us in this city need a sense of belonging, that the people in the east need that sense of belonging, that sense of excitement, that this is a great community. For the same reason, I won't support any delay in the pool at Linwood or Hornby, because those communities also need that sense that things are happening, that there is really cool things happening in their community, and that they belong to a great community where they can go to places cheaply or freely and be hugely respected at those places, because that's what part of living in Christchurch is about. So I'm totally in favour of the hot water pools in Brighton, and I won't be supporting any delay in them.
Tim.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to support the hot water pools. I think, David, Mike was quite right with regards to his comments of the core. There's no question and no argument about that. But to get a brand in there like Save Mart or something, there must be some kind of stimulus to attract them there. And I think that because of the situation they're in, it is council that must lead that. And I think that for us to put saltwater pools, another attraction in there that will hopefully stimulate something further in that core is essential. I can't think of anything more wonderful than sitting in a hot water pool after a surf with that beautiful vista. I mean, I am one of those people that goes to the mall and looks at new surfboards and realises I've got to pay for my children, so I just go past the window. But I do think it's really essential that we start looking at what we're going to invest in there and what the stimulus into that core will be. And if we can get a brand like Save Mart or something in there, that will be the saviour. In Hornby, people travel to Hornby. Smart. Sorry. Yeah. I need GPS when I go shopping. It's pretty embarrassing. Yeah, but I do think the reality is that the council must invest in that area to get investment in that core, and it's not going to come any other way. I do want to make another comment. Really interesting, we keep talking about the easterly in Christchurch. No one mentions it in Timaru, and I think you've all been down to Caroline Bay when it's been blowing, and I actually think it's worse. In Dunedin, interesting enough, on the news it said 8 degrees. In the halls of residence where my daughter is, it had the reality check of what the true temperature was. It was -1. So the wind chill factor in Dunedin was 9 degrees, because they are sick of students coming to Dunedin and getting freezing. So I think that we've actually got to change our perception and forget about the easterly. Look at that wonderful kilometres and kilometres of beautiful sand. I actually go there surfing now because I'm so bad. Everyone else goes to Sumner, so it's great. But I just think we've got to change our whole attitude and start selling Brighton a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron.
I'll just start by saying you should encourage your daughter to go to prison, because it's a minimum of 17 degrees there and not -1 like university. But, she could work there rather than being, have a sleepover. Now, I will support Mike's motion here to defer this, and I'll do that for a few reasons. If this was a different neighbourhood, if it wasn't New Brighton, if it was out where I live in Herwood, it wouldn't even be a debate. The people in my neighbourhood wouldn't be asking for this, because our neighbourhood's not broken. And the reason why the people in New Brighton are hanging on to this particular item so much, I believe, is because we still haven't fixed their streets properly. The place is still... You go over that bridge, well, it's kind of a bridge. It looks like something out of a war movie. It's been wrecked, and that's... If their neighbourhood had been restored a couple of years ago back to how it was pre-quake, they wouldn't be asking for all these things to help, in brackets, save them. I think they've actually been misled a little with the hot pools. There's other attractions that could go out there that could do really well. They've already got some of the best. The pier is a fantastic attraction. The ocean itself is probably the best attraction they've got, and they've got heaps of that. And yet that's what I believe the attraction at New Brighton should have always been. It should have been something that's educational, that looks to the future of how we interact with the oceans. It's something that would attract visitors from around the world and across the city to go and be part of their ocean and to use it in a different way than sitting in some water that's had salt added to it. It's not the ocean water you're sitting in, it's fresh tap water that we're going to put salts in, and then you'd sit there at a huge cost heating it, not like Hamner where the heat comes out of the ground. And so I think it's a little misleading. Yet the playground, the waterfront playground, sensational, $8 million. It'll be one of the best in the country. Certainly it'll be the best waterfront one in the country. That in itself's an attraction. The core's not right, we know that. And us stepping in to save that, I don't know if that will work. I think there's a number of different ways of doing that, and we should be looking for more solutions than just this one. And the Kiwi 2 site is another great pool facility that's just down the road from where we're going to put an aquatic facility to try and attract people across the city to use. The points that were raised by the mover of the amendment, I think, justify it being here and the support of other councillors.
Jimmy?
As a local councillor, Hornby area, I won't support this one because if we back to the February, we consider this one. If the East area, they have QE2 for $30 million for the new leisure center, and also the council dedicated for the 8 million household poor, But we go to the public consultation regarding to the draft, the annual plan, and we got the feedback. Majority prefer, to this new facility. So if we support this amendment, how do we to face to those the majority the residents? This is my particular concern. So the timing is the difference. Another one is we establish the development the kind of the limit. We should dedicate them to rebuild, reconstruction of our city. Otherwise, they have no sufficient resources how to make it happen. This is my concern. Even I'm in the southwest area. This is my point of view. So I cannot support this amendment. But it's the same situation. We might have the Lingwu, the poor. We might have the southwest, the poor. Already, in the long-term plan, also in the southwest area plan, we already, discussed this issue. Already the put into the long-term plan, annual plan. So it's not a good timing. This time we reject or refuse those facility. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to comment briefly, and then I'll hand back to Mike for summing up. But New Brighton lost its mojo when it lost its monopoly on Saturday trading, and that was a very long time ago. I mean, New Brighton was crowded with people, and I'm afraid that the wind hasn't changed its direction in all that time. It was crowded every Saturday because it was the only place you could go to shop. When the earthquakes happened, New Brighton looked to its council and said, and actually looked at what was happening in the centre of the city too, with all of the anchor projects and the legacy that was being created for the centre, and said, how about using the earthquakes as an opportunity to create a legacy for us? And when we came in as a council, we said, yeah, we think that's a good idea. And more importantly, and perhaps we didn't capture this right at the time of asking the community what they would like as a legacy project. This is what the community said they wanted. This has come from the community. This is not a top-down decision. This is good for New Brighton. We said we will put $5 million on budget for a legacy. The legacy they chose, the hot salt water pools, we couldn't do for $5 million. That's why we went out and consulted on the annual plan. And the community came back and they said that this was really important, but what we hadn't contemplated was that New Brighton is the destination on the journey from the city to the sea along what will be formally known as the residential red zone. And that makes it really important that what is in New Brighton is not only good for the for the area of New Brighton, but that it's actually really an important destination for the whole of the city. And that's why I don't think that this is actually about Brighton. That's why I asked staff I think the most fundamentally important question. When you take out all the New Brighton submissions, all the form submissions, was there a majority support from the submissions that came in for this? And there was. So the rest of Christchurch have said in terms of their submissions that this is an important thing for New Brighton. So I can't support the amendment. I'll be supporting the motion to support this. So Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really, really interesting, I guess, because, you know, we're city councillors, so obviously we have to look at what's best for the city. And as you said, this project started at $5 million, and it's obviously crept up and up and up, and for some reason, once we put an idea in someone's mind and they say, yes, we can't then change it, and where does that lead us as a city into the future? We're looking at an annual plan now, but next time it's the long-term plan, and we're putting so many projects into setting them in concrete through this annual plan that when we get to the long-term plan, we're going to be stuck, and we won't be able to get these rates down. People are actually struggling out there. And yeah, the hot saltwater pools, great idea, but let's get the basics done first. Let's get these streets fixed. Let's see what else we can do to help New Brighton. But $11 million additional to the actual $8 million already there, we're looking at $20 million. And the reports that I've seen show that $14 million to do the hot saltwater part is not enough. So they're going to be coming back again, and they'll come back again. As soon as this went out into the public domain, there was calls to put a roof on it. So even they are not happy with what we're saying. It's just going to keep snowballing. We really need to have a check on what we're doing there, and by pausing this for 3 years, we'll get that. It's not saying no to it, because I think a hot saltwater pool would be good for the city, but it's not the right time.
Thank you. All right, well, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. That's lost. Do you want to record the names? So those in favour, just put up your hands. So that's Templeton, Davidson, Kewen and Johansson. Thank you. And the second amendment is moved by Councillor Clearwater, seconded Councillor Cotter, prior to the construction of the hot saltwater pools, information on relevant coastal hazards and any hazard mitigation work may be required as provided to council's satisfaction. Is it? Yeah, Phil.
So, councillors, I am supporting the hot saltwater pools today. However, I think we need, as a council, we need to be prudent. And I want to speak briefly about our strategic framework. I know that's in draft form, but just to remind you that in fact one of our strategic priorities, and I quote from it, is that we have informed and proactive approaches to natural hazard risks. And council, that's part of to be council's focus really for improvement. And I think it's really clear that at a strategic level, as a council, we can't just react to any natural hazard that may happen, including coastal hazards. We need to be proactive and plan for the risk to mitigate or manage that. And if there is a risk, the question is, what would council do to reduce that risk? And as been said earlier in the debate, this is a large investment decision, $19 million. And if natural hazards are to impact on this project, we'd need to know the costs of that mitigation. And because, in fact, we'd almost certainly be unable to afford any retrofitting after construction. So, I think it would be huge cost. I also think that what I'm proposing is part of really working in partnership with DCL. And I also think that, you know, basically my amendment is really looking at how can we reduce any risks to council and to DCL. And I think it's what my amendment does is it really supports good governance as part of the way we work as council. So I urge you to vote for this. I think this is a sensible way forward.
Okay, Ref.
Sorry, this is actually is it possible to ask a question about this? Because to me, isn't this going to just be part of the resource consent process? I don't know.
Can I just say that DCL are quite happy with this going in? Don't have an issue with it.
I actually think we're stepping over the boundary of governance and management, and we have
Just
resource consents, we're building consents.
Just a simple question.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just wondering whether, I would have thought that this would have been a requirement of the resource consent.
Exactly.
So, they can't get a resource consent without meeting certain requirements. But I have no problem, and I'm sure that DCL have no problem in terms of reporting to council. And it is an issue that councillors have an interest in. Sorry, I hadn't even focused my attention on the amendment because it wasn't, in my mind, it was just asking for information to be provided.
What worries me is that the resource consent process takes into account this type of thing in that type of area. What worries me is that it provides another opportunity for councillors to kind of dig their toes in above what actually the council organisation is doing in terms of regulatory approvals.
No, but it may have operational impacts, that's all. Any consenting conditions may have future OPEX conditions for councils.
Yeah, but they're done through the resource consent process.
Brendan, can you help?
Yeah, just in respect to Councillor Manji's question, both the resource consent and the building consenting process will take into account both the current and future hazards in that location. And I think the intent of the question is to ensure that this resolution didn't unduly delay any of the work. So maybe it's some wordsmithing of the resolution, because the intent of it will be taking account of it as part of the resource and building consent processing. But I don't think anyone is intending that construction is delayed while a parallel process of reporting to council is required.
No, so...
And nothing can happen without a consent. And if the consent changes things like budgets or requirements...
If Councillor Clearwater and Cotter are happy, then I'm happy to add some words to my recommendation, which is B, notes that DCL will report to council on the coastal hazard / mitigation required for their resource consent or building consent, for their consents. Yeah. So that way they're reporting to us. So it's just providing us advice, really.
So that will be in addition to the amendment, the note.
There's no need for the amendment.
Well,
we can withdraw the amendment.
Well, what I think is really,
I'm trying to be helpful here.
I realise that.
If we know
amendment with the requirement there of so it's dropped off of requiring to council's satisfaction does in fact conflate the consenting authority role of our staff in granting the resource and building consent, if that is the decision to make versus a council satisfaction. That's a terminology.
I did not read it that way. So, and if that's what's intended, I won't be supporting.
No, I'm prepared to change the words and delete the words to council satisfaction to make it clear that in fact the information comes to council. And
well, can't we just note that DCL will report to council on the coastal hazard mitigation required for their consents?
Well, I think my amendment is really clear that this is prior to construction, that the any risk mitigation required will be very clear to council, and it is part of our strategic priorities. If we don't, we're not following our strategic priorities.
Sorry, tell me what it is about noting that DCL will report to council on this. on the coastal hazard / mitigation required for their consents? Because if they're going to come and tell us what they're putting up as mitigation for their consents, how is that not before they start construction?
And also it suggests that we as a council may override the resource consent potentially issued by the council organisation.
We can't do that.
Well, exactly, that's the whole point. So I mean, we're going to get zillions of reports as we go through the whole process, detailed design, detailed budget, the whole caboodle, but the resource consent piece and the coastal hazards is part of the organisation's job.
Well, notes that DCL will provide ongoing reports to council, including on the coastal hazard mitigation required for their consents. And that way you're getting the information at the time that they're lodging their consents. All right? So that now we can now move to the actual motion, which is to confirm funding, and I'm not going to speak again because I've already spoken on the amendment. Sorry? Yeah?
I'm just wondering at what point, because Ref was just mentioning, you know, the whole process and things coming back all the time. As part of this, is council actually signing off on the design or scope, or is all of that work going with DCL like the playground is? I'm just not clear at what point it comes back to council again.
Sorry, I didn't realise the question was going to be asked. My understanding is that DCL and the DCL board have the delegation subject to council making this resolution to grant them the money on final sign-off, but as part of DCL's reporting and remembering equally that council owns DCL, I'm sure that they will be keeping council well informed of the scope and specification issues throughout. So that might be something that you wanted to add into a note with that second note there. We're providing ongoing reports to council, including on the coastal hazards and or design,
including scope and design, and on the including
I would simply note that my understanding is that the DCL and the DCL board will make that final determination.
Yeah.
This is going to be a council-owned asset, so I think we need to have something in there about operational costs.
Surely this is all part of the business case that DCL have been putting together over months now anyway.
Yes, but we're approving
and any building
but
that they
is in the LTP. It is not going to be built before June next year, is it?
No.
Scope and design stuff, $1 million to do that work in the first in 17-18 to do design consultants, and so we wouldn't want to go back and change that stuff in the LTP.
Sorry.
I was concerned with the whole covering and not covering and those kind of things. It would be really good to be able to see that as a council decision rather than a community board one.
They've done all this work with the community. This is about signing off on the budget. The detailed design will be done together with the community.
Yes, I know, but what councillors are raising is that that scope and design will have an impact on OPEX, and so they're just asking for some a surety around the OPEX going on the budget and at the appropriate time. So
I think it's absolutely essential because, I mean, you know, they could design anything that could leave us or future ratepayers with quite a high contribution to make. Hopefully not.
Plan, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other large project comes back to council for sign off.
Implications as part of the LTP, so it's just a bit too early for that decision yet.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. So those opposed, Aaron, Yanni, Mike and Sarah. Right, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is recreation charges. Which we also consulted on. We have an amendment, but the amendment relates to Linwood Woolston Pool, so it's not. Oh, actually, and we have another amendment in relation to extending the hours. So can you move the second amendment, because it's not, it's an additional, it's adding a recommendation. It's not required to be dealt with as part of this one, it's not required to be dealt with for this to be dealt with, but the Galloway-Chen amendment is, which is supporting the staff recommendations re free entry to swimming pools for preschoolers, but with an amendment that this to be extended to 5 p.m. weekdays and include weekends. So the recommendation that's come through from the work that I've done with people is around visiting any swimming pool open between 9 a.m. 3 p.m. on school days to have free entry. One accompanying adult currently has free entry to be carried out on a trial basis over the financial year ahead. And that includes now the green prescription. So we've got an amendment which would increase the hours. So I would actually propose that we just have a single discussion around this, but I will call Councillor Galloway to speak to the amendment. Questions? Of whom? Oh, okay. Can we get a quick cost implication of extending the hours?
There's also. So I've got, there's two questions. One is what are the cost implications of extending it to 5 p.m. weekdays and including weekends? And the second question is what are the implications for the pools when the busiest periods of the day have an influx of additional preschoolers?
The first question, it's difficult to quantify accurately at this point, but I would imagine the cost would increase by about 50%, to $120,000 per annum. That is an educated estimate rather than a fixed cost. Of more concern to us would be the capacity. The pools are busiest after school. The rationale behind this proposal is that preschoolers have the opportunity to swim whilst school is in session. The facilities are quieter, the health and safety risks are lower, and people generally have a better time. It also assists in building up numbers in a quiet time. If we were to schedule preschoolers and offer them advantage at the same time as our busiest time, I think we get quite a customer backlash and we would congest our facilities. I'd probably proceed with caution.
Yeah. Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah. My two is that just on the amount, the 80,000 that's in there, is that the amount of tickets we currently collect, essentially, or the admissions? Just confirm.
Yeah, it's an estimated loss of revenue, right, being tickets we wouldn't collect.
Okay, cool. And then the other one is, here it says September to April 2017. Shouldn't that read 18? Because that's, otherwise it's been...
Yes.
Yeah, the September 17 to April 18, I have to take responsibility for that, sorry.
Very good. Well spotted. I didn't even notice it. All right, Anne.
Thank you. Good points, John. I think the reason I'd like the hours to be extended is because many preschoolers are actually in early childhood education during the day because their mums are working. So those families that we're trying to target probably wouldn't be able to take advantage of this. After school, many families come to the pool for swimming lessons. They often have preschoolers along with them. It would be quite nice to be able to lessen the financial burden on the family by just perhaps providing a discount for the preschooler. And also the weekend is often the only time when families have time together. because of people having to work. So for all those reasons, I think that it would be a great thing to extend the hours in this proposal.
This is the original. What's the
Jimmy?
I would like to have a comment. Actually, it's not this issue, not we ourselves to thought, because from the wider community, especially for those the parents of the preschool kids under 5 years of age. In the southwest area, I heard a lot of people told me that, the parent told me that, that's for the preschool the kids in the early stage, they have opportunity to learn the swimming. That's very crucial for them. Also, the parents and those kids build up intimate relationship during the swimming together, etc. But this amendment, even is a small thing, from the 3 p.m. to the 5 p.m. Also consider the weekend, but it's a bigger step for council. Give the people a stronger signal. The council would like to take a more positive way to provide the service to the community, to all the people. So I urge all the councillors fully support this amendment.
I'm sorry, but you don't get to participate in the debate. Are there any other speakers on this amendment? Yanni?
Yeah, I strongly support the extension of the amendment. I do wonder about the costs, and I actually think it would be a great problem to have that more people went to our recreation facilities, particularly preschoolers. I did wonder whether we needed to I guess we've got point B there, so I'll save my comments. I'll just include my comments now rather than debate it later, but just to say that I think as part of the LTP that, we really do need to look at what we can do more than this, but I appreciate that we're going to do a lot of work for the LTP as already been discussed, so this is a good starting point, and I think it would be really interesting to see how it goes. I was actually keen to do it sooner than September. I'm not quite sure what the rationale is behind September and whether we couldn't just do it from the 1st of July. So I just put that on the table, whether the mover and the seconder had thought about that. But yeah, I'm really happy to support the amendment.
So since I stopped John from entering into the debate, I now know why he was frantically waving his arm in the air, which was that his calculation didn't include weekends. So it will be considerably more than the amount that he gave as a calculated but nevertheless estimate. So I'm not supportive of making this amendment. I think that the idea of getting our swimming pools available for use during the times when it is more their downtime than their busy time, that to me is where we start. I'm in favour of making sure that this is part of the LTP process. I think there was a lot of public feedback on it, and people were very supportive around making these facilities accessible. But also, I think that Learn to Swim really touched a chord, and it wasn't just with children either. There are adults, and I don't know if people have seen the television ad, which I think's been quite a reminder that there are a group of adults who actually never have learnt to swim, and thinking about how we as a community, a wider community, might address some of those issues will be really important. No, we're having the debate.
Well, I wondered if the mover of the amendment might agree to take the weekends out and have it more likely to go through till 5?
No. It's not appropriate. I mean, anyway, Andrew.
I mean, in the situation that we're in, where the advice that was given by staff prior to starting debate has now been rescinded, corrected, call it what you will. I mean, I think that is a cause for maybe a slightly different approach.
Well, if you'd like to take over the chairing of the meeting, that's fine, but I'm afraid...
Not at all, I don't.
Yes, I know, but the thing is that an amendment, to me, it makes no difference whether you take the weekends off or not. I actually think it's more important that we make a step towards a change and then do the analysis. I mean, that was the point that I was making in my speech. So I think, yeah, but anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, but you get the last word anyway.
Can I just say that I'm just wondering what the point of this is it whether that we want to use the facilities, or do we want to encourage people into having time together as a family and enjoying the water? I think they're two different things. If we want to encourage people to be able to have access to water and to enjoy it together as a family, then I think we actually do need to look at opening at the weekends, because, as I said before, those are the only times that families have together often.
All right, so I will put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's lost. Would you like to record who voted for that? No? It's all good. So now I'll put the full motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now, we had the deferring of the to aquatics facilities, but I'm going to move that down the agenda because it wasn't necessary for that motion. I want to put that further down.
Did we do the green prescription on there?
Eh?
Did we do the green prescription on there?
Yes.
Is it in there?
It's been included. Eh?
That was a challenge.
Okay, the next one that has an amendment is sorry, I am looking at the clock and, you know, very mindful of some things that I want to do today. Okay, suburban master plans. There were 3 amendments there. So one is that council bring forward and incorporate and then a whole number of project plan numbers with associated funding and IDs. And then a second one around holding off and continuing with the Ferry Road Master Plan project. And then pushing out a budget to 2025. And so there's 2 in relation to, one's Woolston parking plan, intersection safety improvement. No, look, I can't make head nor tail of these, so we'll put these ones down to the bottom as well. We'll come back to those. This is very hard. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Well, I just wonder, maybe we should take half an hour now for lunch, and then perhaps I can make some more sense of some of these amendments, because I'm afraid that one's completely floored me, and I thought we would have made a bit more progress this morning. But so, do you want to take half an hour now? Half an hour. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll reconvene at 12:30.
So, do you need some start advice on mechanisms?
So, in simple terms, there's